though, even though no one's here.
Live yet.
All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a early morning. Well, I don't know. I guess it's not early. For me, it's early morning, 10 a.m.
Well, you just told me about your 11 a.m. breakfast.
Yeah.
Which is definitely something someone without kids would say.
I mean, at this point, it's probably more like an 11:15 breakfast because we're running a little bit behind, which is something that when you record a podcast with someone with kids, tends to happen. But that's so I still have kids in my life, through you.
Yeah, well, our kid is in daycare, is at daycare right now, so we're good.
Oh, so why are we starting so late?
So I could wake up.
So you can wake up. Oh, okay. I guess that's fair.
Get some work done.
So great. I'm excited. This is going to be a big show.
Yeah, let's bring the energy back up.
Woohoo!
Yes.
It's so when we start the actual show, that's when the energy comes. This is me. I still got my coffee. That's how you could tell it's a morning show. I'm drinking a coffee.
Instead of a Red Bull.
That's old news already. I haven't drank a Red Bull on the show in a while. You should have told me back then that it wasn't healthy. I think it wasn't a good idea to drink so many Red Bulls.
I mean, I think I'm confident I did. You often tried to tell me to drink Red Bulls, and I said no. And you were like, why not? And I told you, and you were like, that's dumb.
Right. Well, so I guess we grow.
Right. That does sound like me.
Well, I mean, if you were like, I'm so tired, then I was just trying to come up with suggestions for you.
Yeah, a detriment to my health.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really that's not a suggestion a good friend would make.
Well, I mean, it's not that bad. I'm still here. I drank Red Bull and I'm not having health issues right now because of it. I guess we'll see in 30 years.
I guess we'll see.
I'll be like on my deathbed and Brian's going to be like coming to visit and be like, I told you not to drink that Red Bull, stupid idiot.
And you told me to drink. You wanted me to be like you. Good afternoon, Kenneth. I guess, judging by your name, Norway, Denmark, somewhere up north. And Shams. I always pictured Shams as an Eastern time zone guy. Don't know why. So hi, thanks for being here.
Hi, Shams. So at 8 a.m. there, that means he's in like Edmonton.
Yeah.
That's my guess. My guess is
2
Edmonton.
hours and not 3 hours difference in Edmonton.
Yes.
Wow. Look at you, man of the world.
I mean, I interviewed Low Tide, so I had to schedule a show, right?
Of course.
Sorensen is a Danish name in general, for what it's worth.
Well, there, I nailed it. I hedged. I went with 2 countries. There's a famous person with the last name Sorensen.
There's a few. I'm on the Wikipedia for Sorensen right now. There's a whole long list of famous Sorensens.
Okay. Give me a hint. Who do you think is the Sorensen I know?
There's Eric Sorensen, a Canadian journalist, or Jerry Sorensen, a Canadian alpine skier. I assume you'll pick a Canadian.
No, I don't think so. Is there a musician Sorensen?
I mean, there's a long list. So if you tell me the name, I'll tell you if it's on the list.
This isn't fair.
We don't have to do a quiz show. At this point, just say it. I'll say yes, and then we'll start the show.
No, but in Aqua, I'm sure Danes are like, oh, enough with Aqua.
Uh-huh.
But I feel like one of the members of Aqua's last name was Sorensen, or some pop musician.
Oh, but you don't have the name, so I don't know.
You want me to actually look it up?
No, we don't have time for this. Okay, I'll look it. I'll look into this list later and get back to you about Aqua's singer or someone in the chat here.
I'm gonna look them up now.
Okay, you do it while you're paused. I'm gonna start the show.
Wouldn't it be great if I was right? I'm wrong. Oh, okay. But there's someone named Soren. Okay. So if Soren had a son.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna start the show. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Let's talk more about this because I did tell you that my breakfast is scheduled at 11, which now I'm going to be later and later for.
I think Edward got it. Annika Sorensen, the golfer. No, that's that. Soderstrom was her name, not Sorensen.
Okay.
All right.
Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by 2 guys who are super excited to announce that the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League registration is now open. I'm your host, Dylan Dabrowski. With me, as always, the fantastic, wonderful, brilliant Brian Com.
Hey, it sounds like your sound got worse during that intro. Are you still on the right mic?
Okay. I'm on the right mic. Maybe Zoom is just doing some funky stuff, but my Audacity looks a little clippy, maybe. I don't know, but that's just because I was yelling a lot.
It might have been more echoey just because you were shouting.
Oh, okay. Well, so yeah. It's okay. It'll be echoey. How about you in your intro? You could bring up the fact that I'm at a cottage, so that I could make an excuse that's why it sounds not normal.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everybody. Yes, it is that magical once a year show where we announce that Cupful registration is open, which is such a momentous event, Elon, that you are announcing it from a very special location. You're actually on vacation right now at a cottage, and you are taking the time to make this announcement. That's just how special Cupful registration season is to you.
Yeah, you can see behind me, there's a cool art of some flower in a vase. Yeah, maybe I sound a little bit echoey, but I'm going to do my best. We got a really fun show here. We're going to talk a little bit in general about league design and specifically the decisions we've made to try to make the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League the #1 league out there. And then, of course, we'll finish off the show with a little bit of catching up on the latest NHL news. I like to be caught up, right? Because we did that 4-episode series about all of the offseason action. Then, of course, as soon as that episode ended, Thomas Tatar signed with New Jersey, like Yaskin's coming back. So I just want to make sure we're up to date. So that's the plan for today's show. Before we get to everything, let's quickly mention that we're presented by DobberHockey.com, the #1 fantasy hockey website in the whole frickin' world. That's the place to go for all your news and notes as random trinkets drop to us as the training camp approaches. So you want to always be up to date by checking out DobberHockey.com. But okay, with that, Brian, let's talk a lit. Sorry. Brian, so I'll throw to you maybe to start. Let's talk a little bit about the Keeping Karlsson. Let's talk a bit about the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. Brian, you want to give a quick rundown of what that is?
Yeah, I'd love to. So we always mention it as the Cupful, and what it is the greatest fantasy hockey league in the world. If you win the Cupful, you can claim your rightful title as the best fantasy hockey manager in the world. We are across several continents, 300 managers last season, 14 countries at least. And if I want to put a number to the continents, I think we're on at least 4 right now. So if you want to know that you have beaten the best of the best, you join the Cupful and you compete to climb to the top of our ranked tiering system. So how it works is this okay with you?
Sure.
Am I jumping the gun?
No, how it works is go for it.
Okay.
Make sure maybe compliment Dustin when you get to the top.
Okay.
How it works is, you can be like, you climb all the way top just like Dustin from last year.
How it works is it's a pyramid format. So you start at the bottom, say tier 6 or tier 7, and through our promotion and relegation system, by winning and finishing high in your division each year, you climb all the way to the top of tier 1, where you battle it out to be the Cupful Ultimate Champion, who last year is Dustin. So congratulations, Dustin, one more time for having won last year. But we are officially starting the campaign to, that will either be the one where you mount your defense or you are replaced by somebody else who has earned their way into tier 1.
Yeah, I like to think of it as Dustin is going to be dethroned, hopefully by me, because I'm in tier 1 to face him, along with some other really exciting competitors. But yeah, it's going to be a really fun season. And we've made some changes this year as opposed to last year. We've decided to make it a little bit easier for people to climb, which of course means it's also a little bit easier to fall if you are high and then you don't rank highly. So all the people who played in tier 6 last year that won, there were 8 of them. They're all going to jump to tier 3 this year. And then if you win your tier 3 division, you climb to tier 1. So as of the people who joined last year, it just takes 2 wins in a row to join the top tier. And if you join this year, it's probably going to be a pretty quick climb as well if you do well. And regardless if you do well or not, hopefully you're going to have a good time, because Brian and I have designed this league to try to make it the most fun league that we can. So we're just saying right off the bat, before we get into the details, that registration is open to play in the Cupful. You just need to become a patron of Keeping Karlsson. It's one of the perks, I'd like to say many perks that we give to our patrons for supporting our show. So for just $5 a month, you could go to Patreon, sign up as a patron, and then we're going to get you the link right away after you sign up to register for the cupful. Or if you're already a patron, by the time you've heard this episode, you'll have gotten a link to the registration form. So just keepingkarlsson.com/patron, and that will get you all you need to know to register for the cupful. Now we're going to spend the next, let's say, 30 minutes telling you about our league and try to convince you that this is a good idea for your life.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we end every episode by saying fantasy hockey is for everyone, and this is a place where we actually mean it. The Cupful is for everybody. It's a moderated fantasy league too, so Elon and I are commissioners. We try and make sure everybody has a really smooth experience front to back. And whether you're a beginner or an expert, you're going to find the right division and competition for you, which is another great thing about a ranked tiering system. Let's say you don't want to go all out, or you're not ready to go all out competing for tier 1. Well, we've got a bunch of people in tier 4 right now who are all similar skill levels. They found each other based on their promotions and relegations over the year. So that's another reason to join the Cupful, that you can find the right level of competition for you, whether that's super high or super low. But I guess, Elon, it's enough talking about why you should join the Cupful, like the reasons outside the rules. Maybe we should actually explain how the league works.
Yeah, might as well. That'll be fun. So thanks again, obviously, for listening. I think anyone who's listening to a Fantasy Hockey podcast still in August probably wants to climb all the way to the top. No one wants to hang out in tier 4. But, it's getting harder and harder to climb up just in terms of the competition, because now we've had a lot of smart people come through. It was pretty wild. Last year in tier 1, it was like all people who had basically won for like 2-3 years in a row. And then unfortunately, someone had to come in 14th place. Someone had to come in 13th place. It was probably a really humbling experience. I've never had that experience. Maybe I'll have it this year, because once again, tier 1 is obviously going to be very stacked. Okay, so Brian, let's talk about the league. How about we start with the draft, how all leagues start? And again, this episode's not only about the Cupful. We want to just discuss in general the decisions you have to make when you're designing your league. And we know that the main way of drafting is obviously a snake draft. That's how the majority of leagues draft. So you just take turns making your picks, 1 through 12, back 12 back through 1. You keep going until your teams are filled. One thing we did last year, which we found to be a lot of fun, was we introduced slow drafts. So this is a feature that Fantrax has. And obviously you could also do this like offline if you just wanted to do it with a spreadsheet. But Fantrax has this functionality where you can do a draft where it's like 6 hours between picks. So you can set the limit. You can even on Fantrax like set it to turn off overnight so that people don't have auto picks happening while they're asleep. And it's really fun because then you don't have to like, first of all, just schedule. Everyone has to be available at the same time. And also we found it was a blast to be in like your league chat during the draft, like a draft that takes like 2 weeks. And after every pick, you're in your chat, you're like being like, oh my God, I wanted that guy. You just sniped me. Holy cow. And all of this different, what's the word I'm thinking of? It's different. Whatever. I can't think of it. All this different engagement that you get by being in your league chat. And also it's a good opportunity during the slow draft to start, especially in a league like this, which is like a public league where you're not necessarily playing with friends of yours. During the slow draft is your opportunity to maybe make some connections with people, chat with them. You'll be able to leverage those connections during the season. So for the Cupful this year, we're going with slow drafts a little bit, obviously, just because it's hard to coordinate a bunch of strangers from all over the world to have a draft time that works for everyone. But I would recommend for you organizing your leagues. I know obviously the actual draft, if you could all get together in the same city and like have a hangout and have a draft with an actual board, like that's probably the optimal. But if that's not the situation, you're planning on just drafting online anyways, I might recommend a slow draft because it is a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. You really do get to know your league mates. And like you said, build those connections for trades or just fun throughout the season. It also lets you, oh my God, I'm just going to start that over. Yeah, slow drafts are fun. Like you said, it's a really great way to know the people you're playing with. And of course, in the Cupful, we do it to try and adjust so that people aren't waking up at 2 a.m. in certain countries who are playing, and everybody sort of has a fair shot. Of course, there is the excitement of a live draft, and we're not taking away from that at all, having it, your 90 seconds per pick. But hey, how about a little more than 90 seconds per pick, just to make sure you're grabbing the player you really want, and having a draft. Like the draft is one of the best parts of the year. So to have it run over a couple weeks instead of a couple hours actually just stretches out all the fun and excitement of it. So we tried it last year for the first time in the Cupful. It was a huge success. We're going to do it again. And it leaves a lot of time for chirps between draft picks too.
Yeah. One lesson we did learn, though, the one frustrating thing about a slow draft is when like someone doesn't make their pick and all the time is ticking. And obviously sometimes people are just at work. The whole point is like if you're at work and if you're busy, whatever, yeah, you have time to like finish your stuff. But then there would always obviously be like a couple people in a couple of divisions who just somehow like didn't know it was their pick and didn't show up. But that's what Brian and I are here for, because we're the commissioners of this league. We got some volunteers that are going to help us out. We got some tech. Kevin H is building us a whole bunch of tech to make sure that this league runs smoothly. So, you know, we're going to try our best to make these drafts also run smoothly and reach out to people. If like a couple hours have gone by, we're going to try not to let the clock tick down all the way to zero, just for them at the end to be like, oh man, I didn't even know it was my pick.
But we're also not going to pester you all day long.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line.
It's a fine line, and we walk it very carefully. So there's enough space for everyone to breathe while making their pick, but also we try and make it as expedient a process as possible. But slow drafts are really fun. If you haven't done one, you can actually do them all off season long. If you're not sure, slow draft, I've never tried one, just go to Fantrax, make a new random league, grab a few friends, and begin a slow draft, and you'll see just how fun the experience can be.
Yeah, throw some stakes on there. Why the hell not? Oh, by the way, auction drafts is another option for drafting, and that's what we do. It's like the final boss, as Dave Betton has told me, of the Cacupful, is if you climb to the top tier, in order to win the top tier of the Cacupful, you have to win in a league that had an auction draft, which is a whole other can of worms. Every year we produce the auction draft as an episode of Keeping Karlsson. And so that's the whole thing where you have to bid on players and everyone kind of has the same chance of getting every player. There's a bunch of pros and cons in terms of auctions over snake drafts. And the big pro that everyone always brings up is it levels the playing field, since now there's the order doesn't matter, right? It's like everyone has the same chance to get every player. So that's obviously another fun. It takes a little longer and the strategy becomes a little bit more complex because it's not only about, evaluating players. It's all about this mind game of like, how much are other people going to bid on this player? So is this a good price for me to pay for Seth Jones, the first D off the board? There's a lot more stuff to think about, but that could also be a lot of fun. And we're going to be doing that for tier 1 in just a couple months. I can't believe the season started so soon. Brian, training camp starts in less than a month. That's crazy. I'm just saying it.
That's very crazy and very exciting, and super exciting for our auction drafters is that we also turn that auction draft into a live broadcast that gets released as an episode of Keeping Karlsson, where we interview the managers, talk strategy. If you want to hear how it's gone in past years, you can find these old auction draft episodes from past years in tier 1 of the Cupful in your feed. It'll help you get a sense of what competing in the pressure cooker of tier 1 is like.
Okay, so let's switch over now to the scoring system. So obviously the two main types of scoring systems for fantasy would be a categories league or a points league. And then obviously you could get into the minutia of like which categories to use. Like if you're in a categories league or a points league, like what do you want to count? In the Cupful, we use a points league. And we've done an episode like this kind of every year, like discussing league strategy. So we decided on this one not to like go in and repeat the same stuff we've said before, but there's obviously pros and cons. Some people love categories, some people love points. And I really have always come down on the side of, I like to be in a mix of the two types of leagues because there's the strategy of trying to win more categories than the other person. But then anyways, there's a lot to it, but Cupful is a points league. And the way we've come up with our points system is basically we started with like a goal and we decided a goal is going to be worth like 5 points, or basically we said 4.5 points.
Can I interrupt you? Can you say Cupful is a head-to-head points league?
Well, we'll say it after we can say it's head-to-head.
Well,
I was just talking about the scoring
to
system.
Me just sounds like you accumulate I don't know why you wouldn't say head-to-head here.
Okay.
Or just say it's head-to-head and then it's points.
All right. So where should I start from?
Cupful is a head-to-head points league.
So the Cupful is a head-to-head points league, and the way that we've determined our point scoring system, we sort of started with a goal. We just, arbitrarily, goals would say worth 5 points. And then what we looked at is how frequent the other actions are related to a goal. So a shot, we decided to make 0.5 because usually around 10%, maybe a little less, 10% of shots turn into goals. We made an assist 3 points because usually around 66% of points are assists versus goals. Anyways, yes, we sort of worked out by the frequency of that. We also threw in a couple, minor categories like blocks and hits, 0.5 for blocks, 0.25 for hits. We gave a point for shorthanded points. They're rare and fun. And one notable thing about Cupful that's different than a lot of leagues is we actually don't give a bonus for power play points. And our reasoning for that is pretty simple. The players who get a lot of power play points are already benefiting their managers because they're getting them a lot of points. If you're on the power play, you have that advantage of being a player that gets a ton of points. And if you look through our league rankings last year based on our scoring system, it's all the players with the most power play points also ranked pretty high in points. So that's why we figured no need to give an even additional bonus to the players who get power play points. So yeah, that's our patented cupful scoring system. For the skaters, we'll get to goalies in just a sec. But Brian, do you want to comment at all on the skater categories?
For sure. So again, Elon said this is our patented system. It's not formally patented yet. However, we totally encourage you to use our couple points system. We put a lot of thought into this and we fine tune it year after year. So Elon's about to get to the goalies too, but I'll just say for the system as a whole, if you want to see it with your eyes, go to cupful.com/rules and you can find the info over there. It looks better on mobile than on desktop. By the way, there's like this giant chart on desktop. Anyway, a couple points about the skater categories. So blocks and hits, half point for a block and a quarter point for a hit. Of course, those aren't things that you necessarily want your players to be doing because they don't necessarily have the puck, but this is a way to give defensemen proper value so that they can compete with forwards. Elon, you already mentioned the power play point thing. Rewarding power play points would just be overpowering some of the league's top scorers and making it that much harder to make up ground if you're not somebody who has enough of those guys on your roster. And then that one shorthanded point that we give, that's been a bit of a point of contention because some people don't see why that's important. It's not predictable, even though it is for some players year after year. And also it's largely inconsequential, which we know that one shorthanded point will, I think 98% of the time, be completely meaningless in the greater scheme of things. But if you want to go ahead and draft someone who plays on the power kill, so to speak, like Brad Marchand or Sebastian Aho, you do have a chance of getting that extra shorthanded point when you need it to put you ahead in a crucial matchup. You're muted.
Yeah, so like Brian said, shorthanded points don't happen very often, but sometimes it's just like for fun, right? Like when your player scores a goal and then you realize, oh, it's a shorthanded goal, I just got an extra point. Woo! So just, add some more fun. Similar to shutouts for goalies, right? They don't happen very often. We don't want to, in a categories league, I wouldn't recommend using shutouts or shorthanded points because they're so rare that just some random team is going to win it every week, like 1-0 basically. But in a points league, you get the opportunity to just reward something cool without having it like take over the league. So speaking of goalies, so we actually made a change this year. So forever, it's been 2 points for a win, -2 for a goal against, 0.35 for a save, and 1 or 2 for a shutout. And we realized recently that goalies seem to be becoming less and less valuable in our format to a point where a lot of people just chose not even to draft goalies at all and just use the extra roster spaces to have more people on their bench to stream in as skaters. And what we realized is the reason, or one big reason why goalies were going down in value is goalies are just like playing less in general in the NHL. Like aside from like your Vasilevskis and your Hellebucks, most goalies, like if you look at teams, a lot of teams are going with the tandem or they're going with like maybe a 60-40 split at most. So it became, if you didn't have Vasilevsky or Hellebuck or maybe like 1 or 2 other guys, David Dubnyk a couple of years ago used to play all the games. Now, good luck if he'll even play one game next year. But yeah, like nowadays it just made it that goalies rarely played. And since their points weren't worth so much compared to skaters, it just made them so much less valuable. So we've decided to make a little tweak, and goals against have now gone from -2, as they've been forever, to -1.5, which accomplishes 2 things. First of all, it makes goalies, more valuable relative to skaters. Like Vasilevsky now becomes the 9th most valuable player in terms of total points from last year, as opposed to 30th that he would have been if it was -2 for a goal against. The other thing is we did a survey at the end of the season, and a lot of feedback we got is people really hate when a goalie drops negative points on them. That is not fun because, none of the skaters are going to give you negative. We don't count plus minus and allow you to drop to negative. So people would get pretty frustrated if your goalie comes in, lets in 3 goals and gets pulled and you just got a -6. So now we've taken away a little bit of the pain of this negative. It could still happen, but now we're only -1.5 for a goal against. That's a whole 25% decrease in the penalty of having a goal against. So we decided, we're going to give it a try this year. and goalies will be a little bit more valuable. And you know what? I think it becomes an interesting question, right? Because someone like Vasilevsky, you could say now, like I said, he ranks 9th now from last year's points in terms of total points over the season. You could say that now Vasilevsky maybe becomes the most valuable player in the league, or maybe second behind McDavid. McDavid was insane last year because, when you consider value over replacement and how Vasilevsky compares to like the other goalies under this point system, you could say maybe he should be number 2. And you might say, oh, I don't think a goalie should be like number 1 or number 2. But honestly, like, why not? Like, especially someone like Vasilevsky, a rarity in the NHL, a goalie that you're like almost guaranteed to play the large majority of the games and win most of them and have great save percentages. Maybe this should be the most valuable guy in fantasy as well. I'd be curious to know actually if the NHL were to do a draft right now. Let's say if the NHL were to just do like a draft for next year, 1-year draft, and there's no salaries. They're just picking their teams for one season. I wonder how high Vasilevsky would go. He'd for sure be the first goalie off the board, I'd imagine. I wonder if he'd be like, a top 5 pick or if he'd fall. Like, I don't know. I've always kind of wondered that.
Can you name 5 other guys? I think the question, like, let's frame it. Can you name 5 other guys? Because I think GMs in the NHL and teams love having that cornerstone goalie, right? They've been chasing it forever, except there hasn't really been one since the days of Hasek and Brodeur and Waugh. We see these guys come up like Jonathan Quick, say, and win a cup, and then not be able to win their team a whole dynasty's worth of cups or playoff series. I guess Corey Crawford might come close, but we never talk about his name in the same conversation as those other cup winning goalies who made a name for themselves as just being unbeatable in the playoffs. And another reason for that might also be just because the game is a little livelier now, right? There was the whole dead puck era where there weren't a lot of goals. It was easier to goaltend, although I think Dominik Hasek would do just fine in today's NHL too. So if you're looking at where Vasilevsky would go, I mean, you'd have McDavid go early. I don't know if anybody else would go before Andrei Vasilevsky. I have to say, I think everybody would be really eager to try and get themselves that rock steady goalie that would hopefully continue to be rock steady. Of course, I personally, as a real life NHL GM, would never want to invest that much in a goalie, but I'll be pressed with that same decision this season as a fantasy manager because there has not been a goalie as good as Andrei Vasilevsky for like several years in a row in a really long time. Someone that we really feel we can count on. It feels like this is just the moment, where Lucy is pinning the football and then I'm going to draft Vasilevsky like 6th overall in my fantasy draft and the football just gets pulled away. I'm Charlie Brown in the analogy, because anytime that we finally buy in on a goalie being able to repeat some amazing results we've seen from them recently, everything falls apart, but things feel differently with Vasilevsky this time around. So he's going to be someone who's super valuable in the cupful for sure and in real life. But what you said about making goals against less punishing for managers is one way that we've made goalies more consequential in the cupful, because in some leagues you have goalies basically, especially in categories leagues, you have goalies making up, say, 40% of the categories and either win them every week or you lose them every week. And that's it. So the way we tried to make goalies in the cupful, we tried to make goalies optional and be like, okay, well, we don't want goalies to be as overpowered as we've seen them be in other formats. So we're going to try and make their presence a little more muted. However, from the feedback we got, Elon, like you said, people were feeling like goalies were actually barely worth rostering on a regular basis and they could just churn them over and over. So yeah, we're adding some value so that guys like, I'm just looking down the list, Mike Smith's performance last year and Cam Talbot and Vitek Vanacek and Igor Shesterkin all land in the top 100 fantasy players according to our new point scoring system, whereas before they didn't so much. And also, you're not going to get drop negatives. The biggest complaint was, why should a goalie drop negatives on me when a skater can't? And that was part of the high risk, high reward play of goalies. But we've taken out some of the risk and hopefully kept a lot of the reward.
Yeah, and in the end, you don't necessarily have to draft Vasilevsky since all the goalies are a little more valuable. And also, if a goal against doesn't hurt you as much, obviously the trade-off here is that now we're making it that just getting more saves is going to become more valuable. So we are giving more value to goalies that maybe don't even play as well. So you can just wait and try to grab a volume guy. Obviously, in today's NHL, it's a little bit harder to predict who's going to be a volume guy. But yeah, so we'll see how it goes. And the beautiful thing about Couple is every summer, Brian and I put our heads together, talk to some of our trusted advisors, and we always have room to tweak. So we're curious to see how this adjusted scoring system will work. Let's switch over to free agents now. So here's also a place where we've made a big change. So for forever, we've been using this system for the couple where basically every day everyone's on waivers. So you can't just like grab a player anytime you want. You have to wait until the waiver processing time in order to claim your player. So it was basically, this was a way to even out the fact that, you know, some people maybe don't have their phone available all the time in the middle of the day. If it's all of a sudden announced that some goalie is injured and that everyone wants the backup, we thought, oh, everyone should have enough time to see the news. And then before the waiver time, they have time to put in their waiver claims. And, you know, finally, it'll be determined by who bid the most of their fab budget would be determined like who got the player. But we realized obviously there was a lot of downsides to that. So there's a lot of pros and cons. I really love this like fab, by the way, is the free agent budget, the way it worked for waivers, which it still will this year, but not for all of them. But the way it worked was like everyone had $100 budget. Then every day you get to put bids on which free agents you want to add. And then whoever has the highest bid got the player. And so the pro, like I said, is the fact that it really evens out the playing field. There were a few cons that we learned from playing and also from our surveys at the end of the year. Cons of this only daily waivers and not being able to add players at another time. First of all, what's more frustrating than like the middle of the day, maybe an hour before puck drop, you find out that one of your players is going to be scratched or one of your players is injured and you're like, man, I'd really love to drop this player or put my player in the IR and pick up a replacement to help me in this critical night, but it was too late. Couldn't make an ad. Very frustrating. Also so frustrating that most NHL coaches don't announce their goalies a day in advance. So if you wanted to pick up a goalie out of free agency in order to help you in a day, let's say all your skaters spots on your roster are filled, but you have an open goalie spot. You're like, oh, I'll just add a goalie, but you had no way to know which goalie was even going to play. So now you could actually wait until the goalies are announced and then add a goalie that you're guaranteed going to get the game from. Plus, there was also this whole annoying thing on Yahoo, which again, this is just a Yahoo thing, but that's what we've decided to use again this year because of the great UI and everything. But on Yahoo, like if you have a player playing on a day and they get injured in the game and they've already been locked in on your roster, you weren't able to throw them on your IR that night in order to make a waiver claim to replace that player. So you had to wait 2 days to replace your injured player, which just made me want to tear my hair out. So we've decided for this year, we're switching from this like every day, everyone's always on waivers to standard free agents. So any player that's available, you can basically add that player at any time. Of course, if a player is dropped, that player will still go on waivers. That's like kind of the standard. I'm sure any of you who have played on a Yahoo League ever know about how this works. Like I drop a player, then yeah, everyone needs to have an opportunity to see that, you know, okay, Elon's dropped this player. Should I add this player? And then we're still going to have a fab budget. You'll still have your $100 budget of which to use to bid on these dropped players before they become free agents. If no one claims the player, then they become a free agent. But yeah, so that's the plan. So again, to recap, standard free agents and still using the free agent budget for waivers, but not for all players. And that's the plan for this year.
That's the plan. It's a big change for us. We've always loved fab and the bidding sort of daily auction aspect of it. But like you said, Elon, it can be frustrating to manage a roster when you can only make ads for the next day, especially around goalies and goalie start announcements, and especially when a player goes on IR and you can't replace them until a day or two later. We've also heard from our manager feedback survey over the years that the time commitment and sometimes confusion with the fab system can be a turnoff. I mean, I know I sometimes sit down for like an hour sorting and ranking my bids and deciding how much, and then I go to bed and I'm in bed like changing all my bid values up or down by $1 or deleting them or changing the order. So this is a way where you can just make a decision and follow through with it for free agency. We also know though that having no holds barred free agency isn't a perfect way to go about things, right? The biggest counter to having just open free agency is that you're just gonna it's gonna come down to whoever has the fastest finger, whoever is most available to check news and access their pool through the day or evening to check on player news and goalie start announcements, or depending on your time zone, or if you're ready to wake up at 3 a.m. when Yahoo resets the day, that's going to give an advantage to anybody who has one of those things going for them. But thinking back to the leagues I've been in, where you've had fastest finger set up, where you can add a player immediately to your roster, I have a really hard time thinking of impact players that were added, maybe impactful for 1 week, but not for the whole season, not players that are season making or season breaking. And the one example I always think back to, Elon, and I think we were on a joint team that also added him, the year is 2016 or 2015. The year is 2015, and David Perron is traded from Edmonton to Pittsburgh. And we lost our minds. Okay, he's going to play with Crosby. He was really good in St. Louis for a few years. He was really good in Edmonton for a year, and now he's been quiet, but he's going to pick it up with the Penguins now. Everybody go out and get David Perron right now. And then he proceeded to have 22 points in 43 games and be barely rosterable the rest of the way. So I had the fastest finger and was able to add David Perron, but it actually hurt me more than helped me. So I think there's another angle of this free agency, like no holds barred fastest finger situation. Whereas with Fab, I had a lot of time to reconsider my decisions and rethink and process. And now it's just going to be like in the moment, I have to go for it or not. And I'm interested to see how that impacts people's success in managing free agency. So I think the overall flexibility that you get with your roster with same day ads is going to outweigh any of the possible advantages that people are going to get from just being the fastest to a player. I think flexibility is a win for everyone, and that anybody who does get a little win from being first to grab a player, it's not going to be the reason that they win their division.
Yeah, and when I think back, yeah, and like also like related to that, like when I think back to some of my most impactful free agent ads over the years, it was generally players that I just added with no competition, right? It was just a hunch. You know, I remember when Artemi Panarin was the rookie and he had like a good, like whatever first week, and I went and grabbed him in the cupful, and I think it was like a $0 bid against another, you know, no one bid against me. I just like was the first one to think about it, I guess. Or like even you brought up David Perron, like a couple years ago, I remember he like went undrafted in my cupful division, and Brian, I remember you used to be super down on him and say there's no way he's actually going to be that good, and like his numbers in Vegas were inflated or whatever it was. Anyways, I remember I just like grabbed him as a free agent, like I'm just going to give a try for David Perron, and then he ended up obviously having this amazing season. Now like he seems to be a perennial like 70-ish, 60 to 70 point guy. So I don't mean to throw you under the bus there.
You might say a perennial.
Oh, very good. Very good. Okay. Yes. So all that to say, we'll see. We'll see how impactful. I'm with you, Brian, that my hunch is that the majority of free agent ads won't be like, oh, I lost because I couldn't get this guy because I was busy. A lot of those people get like overhyped about them. Then it turns out not to be as big a deal. Remember when Grubauer got injured last year and then people were rushing to add Devin Dubnyk, and we all saw how that
No, I don't remember that, Elon. You were rushing to grab Devin Dubnyk. I mean, yeah, it was a really appealing situation to go and grab Devin Dubnyk. And if I was at my phone or at my computer seeing the news, I might have gone out and grabbed him instead of been hesitant as I ended up being. But yeah, I see that situation. And also full disclosure, Elon, I like me personally, I'm one of the people who doesn't have access to my phone through the day. Like I do all my hockey news and fantasy catching up in like, if I can grab 5 or 10 minutes during the day, great. Otherwise, it's like first thing in the morning and then later in the evening. So I don't want anyone to think that we're putting them at a disadvantage. Like I am going to live one of the least accessible lives this season, and I'm not worried about it. Okay, I'm a little worried about it, but I think this is going to be good.
Yeah, Brian, I think this is going to be better for you. I think you'll do better because you'll sleep more. Because like you said, you won't be staying up at night. Because the problem also with these waiver claims with Fab is like you have to have backup bids. Because let's say you know for sure you want to add someone. Like a player of yours got injured, you have an open spot. And so you're like, okay, I can't just put a bid on one player because what if someone else outbids me? All of a sudden I didn't get. So you're like, you put like 10. I would like go and have like 10 players listed that I hope I'll get one of them. Then like you said, Brian, you agonize over what the order should be of how you list them. So you're going to save all that time, Brian. You're going to get a good night's sleep, and that's going to help you make smarter decisions during the day. So I think it's going to work out well for you. So, okay, let's move on to another cool feature of the couple. So this is like the big thing in fantasy that's, I think, the hardest to come up with how to manage properly, and that's trading. Leagues sometimes fold because a trade happens that people are upset about. Yes.
Sorry, do you want to just, I think maybe one important thing to add would be that there's the 4 move max per week at the end of that.
Okay, sure. So do you remember how I ended saying that?
You said
I think you'll do better. I think you'll be better off.
You'll do better.
Okay. Also, by the way, we've decided on a 4 ads per week max and no season long max. I've said it on previous podcasts. I think the optimal thing would be that I think 4 ads is actually a lot, and it benefits people who, have this like streaming mentality and looking at the schedule. But it's so frustrating if you have a couple of injuries, your ads can run out quickly. I've always had this idea that it'd be cool if Yahoo had a feature where we can say it's like 3 ads a week, but you get unlimited injury replacement ads. So those ones don't actually count against your limit for the week. But anyways, that's not available. So we're going 4 ads a week once again. We've had some thoughts and some discussions. Maybe one day we'll change that, but for now we're sticking with 4 ads per week.
And the 4 ads per week also helps balance the fastest finger piece, right? Because you're not just going to go run out and add everybody the moment you can. You're going to need to think about it, and you're going to need to strategically plan your ad. So if a player does become available on Wednesday and you're the first to know about it, and depending on the state of your matchup, it might not be a good idea for you to burn a move on that player right away. So that's another reason why it's not always just going to come down to the fastest finger with open free agency. Clearly, you can hear me trying to convince myself that it's not always going to come down to that, knowing that I'm going to have one of the slower fingers. But I really do think that helps balance out the same day free agency adding. But I really do think that helps balance out the same day free agent ads.
Okay, so let's move on to trading now. Trading is like one of the biggest things in like all fantasy leagues. Sometimes if you don't set up your rules for trading properly, that could be the bane of the league that ends up causing the league to fold, right? A bad trade goes down, people are upset. Oh, the commissioner just pushed through a trade that obviously benefits him or her. Like, I'm so upset about this. Anyways, yeah, so we all have been in leagues where people have gotten really upset about trades. So one cool feature that we've added, which is not without controversy, but we think it's a pretty cool rule and a feature, as far as we know, only existing in the couple currently of any public league that's ever been promoted is our counter offer mechanism. So basically, like, think about it like this. Don't you hate it when a trade goes down in your league that's like clearly imbalanced? And like, if you're a contender, it's always like your competitor that just got like this free upgrade. And then you're like thinking to yourself, man, you traded Jake Gensel for Martin Jones just because you needed a goalie? I could have given you a better goalie than Martin Jones. If I knew that you were willing to trade Gensel for like basically any garbage goalie, I would have done better. Well, now you can like basically put up or shut up, send a counter offer to the person who gave up Gensel. If they agree to your Shesterkin for Gensel offer, then the first trade will get canceled and the second trade will go through. So that's basically what this rule is. Once a trade goes down, everyone has a 24-hour window to make a counter offer to one of the participants of the trade. And then if one of the participants agrees on the counter offer, then the first trade gets canceled and we put the second trade through instead. So of course, there's pros and cons to this. The con is that it's very annoying for the person who loses out on their amazing Gensel for Martin Jones trade. That person's going to be very, very angry about it. But the pro is it's beneficial to the person, first of all, getting the better return for Jake Gensel. But I think even more importantly, it's also beneficial to the 12 other league participants, as their competitor didn't just get a huge unfair advantage, maybe because they happen to be friends with the person who was the Martin Jones manager at the time. So basically, all that said, the couple, we're a utilitarian league, right? The utilitarianism is the doctrine that actions are right if they are useful for the benefit of a majority. And here we're saying that we would rather benefit 13 people over the one person. And so that's why we have our counteroffer mechanism.
What textbook did you get that utilitarianism? Like, are you reading a lot this summer?
Hey, man, I'm on vacation. I got to keep my brain active.
I don't even know what school of thinking that belongs to. So thank you to introducing me to the concept of utilitarianism.
I've been watching The Good Place, so I'm learning a lot about moral philosophy.
I watched that show too, and that does not ring a bell at all. So that shows how much I pay attention. Our counteroffer rule is anti-ripoff trade. Our counteroffer rule is anti-ripoff trades, anti-collusion, and also anti-veto we don't want to be in that position as commissioners. No one really does, where we have to try and objectively look at what is ultimately a subjective thing and hear, someone else in a league complaining this trade is unfair, and then we have to weigh all the context and figure out and look for precedents and think about consistency in our decisions and try again to be as objective as possible, and then be accused of not being objective. We have taken all of that ugliness out with this counter offer rule. If you think you can do better than the offer that's been accepted, that in your opinion is so unfair, then go ahead and do better. That's what we encourage you to do. This is a way for everybody to have a chance to avoid being in a situation like Elon described, where one manager takes another manager for a ride and everybody else suffers as a result. This way, everybody has a chance to make their best offer within 24 hours of seeing a trade being accepted. And then, like Elon said, it doesn't feel polite to say this, but you can put up or you can shut up. But we're really nice about it.
I mean, I don't know what that means exactly.
Well, I said shut up. It feels rude.
We could be rude. This is a fantasy. You got to get gritty and dirty sometimes. But okay, I will say that we have had this rule in effect last year. Don't think it's not like every single trade got countered, right? It was a very small percentage. Normally, you just make a fair trade. Also, normally I would even sometimes talk to the person I make the trade with, we're not going to accept counters, right? And the person went, I'm not planning on accepting a counter. So no one's stopping you from making a deal like that. Obviously, also no one's enforcing that if you make that kind of agreement. But yeah, if you work out fair trades, it's not as if every single trade was getting countered. And it was not. That was a big feedback we got of people scared of this rule. Was what's even the point of making trades? Every trade I make is going to get countered. It's no, if you make a really rip-off trade that every single manager sees and is what the heck is this? Of course I could do better. Then yeah, that has a good chance of being countered. But if it's just a normal trade, like all of the ones I made, I don't think I accepted any counter offers in a couple, and I was pretty active. So anyway, that's the rule. So next up, we'll just continue telling you about some of the rules of this league. Obviously, we're not telling you everything. You can go to cacupful.com/rules, which we'll link to in the show notes to get the full set of rules. I'll finish just by telling you about the rosters. So we have pretty standard rosters here: a couple left wing, a couple right wing, a couple centers, 4D, a couple util spots, 4 bench. Then we have some IR spots. We actually had a discussion recently. Tom Crowhurst was suggesting that we should decrease the number of IR plus spots from 4 to 3. So I've always been a proponent of more IR, the better, because it's already when you have a good player on your team that gets injured, that's a punishment, right? Because you're going to have to replace this. Even if you could stash this player in IR, you still have to, first of all, find a free agent that's probably not as good as the player that got injured. Otherwise, you wouldn't have, had the original player on your roster instead of the free agent in the first place. Plus, you have to use one of your 4 ads per week to replace that player. So it's why punish the person even more by saying that? Okay, well,
I didn't think you would see that. Sorry.
Okay, why punish the player even more by also forcing them to drop a player because they don't have room on their IR because they've had an especially bad luck and have 5 players injured. So at least we, that's why I always thought it was better to have 4 IR spots. But Tom Crowhurst, he brought up a good point that some people could use IR spots to their advantage in a strategic way. First of all, if there's a free agent that's injured and you have an open IR spot, just stash that person in your IR. If you happen to have an extra ad that you weren't planning on using that week, then later on, you could use that almost like a free ad in a following week. When that player becomes healthy, you bring them onto your roster for one of their games before you drop them. And so, yeah, there's a lot of strategeries that you can implement by having your IR spots used to the max. And so Brian and I considered it. And for this year, Tom, we're going to keep it as 4 IR spots, but definitely something we're going to watch. And it's too bad, actually. Yahoo drops the ball here with this because Fantrax has some great features. So I'd recommend anyone who's using Fantrax for their leagues, I would recommend if you're using IR spots, I would recommend use a bunch of them, but use these features on Fantrax. They make it, first of all, they have a setting where you can make rosters illegal if ineligible players are in IR for more than a day. You can set the amount of time. So you could say, yeah, you could go stash a bunch of people in your IR, but you can't just leave them there indefinitely on Yahoo, where you can just wait to take them out whenever you want. Obviously on Yahoo, your ads get blocked if you have an ineligible player on IR. So it's not you're totally free to do whatever you want, but Fantrax, you can make it even harsher of a penalty. Also, Fantrax has this really great feature, which I would give anything for Yahoo to add. They have a feature where they just don't let you add an injured player. If there's a free agent that's injured, you can't add them to your team. You have to wait till they're healthy. So that way, no one would be able to just go and stash someone to, activate later. I remember in Cupful last year, I stashed UC Saros while he was injured. We all know how that worked out for me. It was amazing. And I don't think I would have added him based on how he did at the start of the year, right? He would have just stayed in free agency. It was only because he was injured that I was okay, I guess I'll add this guy. It doesn't cost me a roster spot. And I benefited a lot. So All that said, those are our rosters.
Those are the rosters. Yeah, the IR spots is we just want a lot. There's a lot of forgiveness and slack. The idea is that it helps people whose rosters are being decimated. And like you said, Elon, it's punishment enough if you have 4 players that you'd like to have on your active roster who have all gone down to injury and you have to just keep replacing them. And I think being gentle on that is, how am I saying this? And I think we're understanding about that versus trying to have fewer IR spots to prevent stashing, which of course is going to happen. If people want to burn one of their 4 weekly moves on a stash, hey, you have the right to do that. But I think more people are going to gain from having that 4 spot flexibility than people who will gain from, oh my God, more people who will gain from having that 4. But I think people have more to gain from having those 4 spots of flexibility than those who want to use them for other more strategic stashing purposes. And I think if we did take it down to 3 spots or fewer, we'd just be punishing people who have had players on their roster get injured even more. So it's definitely not the perfect solution. Like you said, Elon, I think the perfect solution is probably on Fantrax, where you can't even move players between active and bench spots on your roster if you have someone ineligible in IR. I think that's beautiful. And I would love, there's so much of Fantrax I'd love to see on Yahoo, but Yahoo has a very pretty interface.
Yeah. By the way, Fantrax, you have even other options. You can make it that the roster is illegal. Like you could say you don't score any points this day if you have ineligible people on your IR. It's very, yeah. We're not being paid by Fantrax. We're not even using Fantrax, but I do think they have so much flexibility. Fantrax, please make an app that people could use. Like we used to use Fantrax on the couple, and a lot of people would end up, complaining and not playing because they weren't able to, I don't know. Some people, aren't super users like Brian and I, maybe like wouldn't be able to perfectly know how to use the system. And so that's why we use Yahoo. It's like very even, and everyone, it's like very easy to know how to add players and put people in and out of your roster. So anyways, that's why we're using Yahoo. But yeah, some of those features on Fantrax make me drool. I'm not going to lie. Some of them you have to pay extra for.
Yeah, the Fantrax features are amazing. And I guess like there is a whole platform war, right? In fantasy hockey, which one is the best? Yahoo is the one. It gives you what you need. Can you hear beeping in the background?
Just keep going. It's cool.
Okay. It gives you what you need without a ton of flexibility. We'd love to have more, but it's really, really simple and straightforward to use. And like, it's fun to use. Fantrax feels like more of a chore to use and has a learning curve for any new managers. But if you really want to dig in and get dedicated, it is definitely the most powerful platform out there. If you use ESPN, sure, like go ahead. I don't see any real advantage that ESPN has over Yahoo. And then there's some others like CBS and Flea Flicker, which I don't see as being even comparable to ESPN. So that's how I would rank the fantasy platforms. You've got Fantrax and Yahoo at the top for different reasons. Choose your flavor. And then ESPN just a little bit down, and then the rest.
Yeah, and to be fair, I actually haven't used ESPN in quite a few years. So if someone out there is hosting their league on ESPN and has reasons why they think it's better than Yahoo now, because I know they have like an app that's pretty easy to use also, but I remember there were other frustrations with using ESPN. But if you're using it and you think it's really good, please let us know. We could consider it potentially for a future season of the Cupful. Okay, so Brian, I guess let's wrap up talking about the Cupful rules. We could go on forever going into the minutia of every little rule, but we really think we've designed a really fun league that is engaging for everyone. And I guess the last thing I'll say to promote the Cupful is, again, you've got the active commissioners. You've got Brian and I making sure this is going to be a fun league, which you don't always get with other public leagues that you can join. Like, for example, it's very important to us that teams are active. I don't know if any of you have ever had the experience of joining some public league from some other podcast you listen to or whatever, maybe even a Cupful in the past when we weren't as good at this. But, sometimes people, especially people who are doing badly, will end up, stopping to manage their rosters. Maybe they just have players on their bench when they shouldn't, and they've clearly just abandoned the team, basically. And that can be very frustrating. Obviously, it's fine if you're playing against that person that's abandoned their team and you get the easy win, but it's very frustrating if you're competing against someone who's playing against someone who's abandoned their team because they're getting a free win, while you, earlier on in the season, when you play that same team, you had to fight to win your matchup. And so we're just going to do everything we can, as we did last year. We're going to do even better this year. Kevin Hebert has built us some really great tools to try to track and catch really quickly when someone has abandoned their team. And yeah, if we see a team go inactive, we're going to message that manager right away, be like, hey, One of the things, the minimum thing we ask of all of our couple managers, you need to be setting your lineups every day. We don't want to see active players on your bench. We want you to be managing your IR. If a player is injured, put him in your IR. If the player is healthy, if McDavid is back, I don't want to see McDavid in your IR while he's playing games. That makes no sense. Okay, so we're a bit harsh. I know Brian wants to say like we're so nice, but like I'm not going to be that nice to inactive teams. Like obviously we're gonna like mistakes happen. Like sometimes you just had a busy couple days at work. Like obviously we're not just going to kick people out the second that they don't manage their team for a day, but we're definitely going to message inactive managers, ask them to set their lineups, and if they write back saying sorry, whatever, then fine. But if they say, or if they don't respond, or if it happens multiple times, we generally build up a wait list, and eventually we can easily just remove one team and replace it with a manager who's excited to play. And so you, as someone who's listening to this, and I'm sure will be an active manager, you can feel confident that you're going to be playing in a league with active managers. In the worst case, we'll even take over the team and do the minimum in order to make sure that the team is active. So I think that's something that we offer that I know Brian sometimes scoffs at me because I know like maybe I'm too obsessed with not having inactive managers, but it's very important to me.
You are very obsessed with not having inactive managers, which is a net plus for the Cupful. I'll reframe some of what you said and just say we send gentle reminders and we understand that life happens. So we're not going to hold a grudge. Well, I'm not going to hold a grudge. Elon does hold grudges, especially if you just abandon your team and don't respond to our messages. But so long as you're communicative and friendly when we do get in touch, I don't think we're going to have much of a problem.
Yeah, Brian, if someone messages and says, hey guys, I'm sorry. Like I can't manage my team anymore because I got a new promotion at work and I'm busy. I love this person. Like, thank you. You let me know and I'll replace you. Like, no, I love this type of person. I don't like the people who you're playing in we're living in a society here. Okay. We're playing in a fantasy league. Who signs up for a league and then abandons their team without telling anyone? Rude, right? We could all agree on this.
Well, a lot of public leagues, that are free to join and open to everybody and not commissioned, not part of the Cupful, have that happen all the time. They're full, like 75% those people. So that is, if you think Elon's a great guy and you want to get on his good side, and I want Elon and you want to get on his good side and I want Elon to like me. Here's all you need to do. Sign up for the Cupful, do your draft. About 2 weeks in, send Elon a note and say, hey, I joined, but look, I just can't keep things up. Can you find someone else to replace me? Elon's going to remember your name and love you forever just for following those few easy steps.
I don't know if that's exactly what we want to encourage. I think I'd rather just people play and have fun and do well.
I'm just giving the shortcut for people like, anyway, we're a super active league because we know that one or two inactive managers abandoning a matchup is going to have ripple effects across the whole league on all managers in the final standings. We want people and we encourage people, and we have a lot of fun stuff going on our Discord server, and we're communicating through the year to make sure everyone's engaged from first week to the last so that everybody is always trying their best to make sure that the competition is fair all the way through.
Yeah, like Edward just said in the chat, if you don't manage your roster, you're losing like 1.5 million good place points, and you don't want that. Okay, so Brian, that's the Cupful, okay? If you've been listening to this episode and you're intrigued, you've never heard of this league before, and you want to join, like Brian said at the start, like anyone can join. Sign up to be a patron of Keeping Karlsson. Go to keepingkarlsson.com/patron. Once you sign up, you're going to be taken right to the registration form, and then basically the sign-up deadline is September 13th, so you have plenty of time. But also, at the same time, just register now. If you're not a patron right now, you can sign up to be a patron. You don't get charged until September 1st either way. So just get it, check it off your to-do list, sign up to be a patron, register for the Cupful. And then once the registration deadline passes, we're going to set up all the leagues and you'll get your league invite. And we'll tell you how to get ready for your slow draft on Fantrax. And that's it. So come join us. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah. And when the deadline passes, we'll also set up your Discord, your dedicated Discord channel for your division chat. Oh, what am I saying here? Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you'll also get an invite to your division chat channel, dedicated channel for just your division, and the Cupful Zone, where all Cupful managers talk on our Discord server. Also, if you just want to learn more about the Cupful again and see the rules, go to kkupful.com. That's KKUPFL.com to learn so much more about how the league works.
Exactly. And reach out to us on Twitter at Keeping Karlsson. We'll answer any questions happily. Okay, so with that, Brian, we still got a couple minutes left. Why don't we just cover the latest news and notes from the NHL just to make sure we're totally up to date here. So we're transitioning from Cacouple to a player that maybe do I want to draft in the Cacouple? I'm not so sure. Let's talk about it. Tomas Tatar just signed with the New Jersey Devils, 2 years, $4.5 million per year. That's a nice amount of money for a player who was getting healthy scratched by the Habs through their latest playoff run. But of course, before that, Tatar had a breakout 2019-20 season. He had 61 points in 68 games. That's a 74-point pace. He was amazing. But then he fell to only 30 points in 50 games for under a 50-point pace this past season. And then, like I said, he didn't even play in the playoffs. Also, this past season, his ice time fell to below like 15 minutes per game. His power play time fell. Basically, Ducharme and company just didn't like him anymore, and he fell off. Now he goes to the Devils, where you've got to imagine he'll have a solid shot at landing in the top six with either Hughes or Hischier as his center. I guess his main competition at wings would be like Sharon Govich, Yanni Kuokkanen, who also just signed a new contract, by the way, Jesper Bratt, maybe Pavel Zacha, though he could play center. But I'd assume he's not being paid $4.5 million to be a bottom six power play 2 guy, right? Though I thought that about Mike Hoffman last year, and we saw what happened. So Brian, do you think the stars are aligned for Tatar to have a bounce back season and maybe get back to being at least a 60-point guy with over a couple shots per game, because those also tanked last year? Or are his numbers from last season maybe more likely to hold? He is 30 years old. Sometimes players just get worse as they age.
Sometimes, almost all the time, players get worse as they age. But Tatar going to New Jersey is something I really like for player and team. It actually seems like a really clever combination, Tatar and the Devils, where they're both getting something they need that they haven't had for a little while. And for the Devils, a team that's ranked about 25th in goal scoring over the last few years, they're getting a winger in Tatar who can score 20 or 25 goals and rack up assists too, which is a great way to support their star players who are both centermen, Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, who've both been on an island essentially since Taylor Hall left. Kyle Palmieri was there and was fine, but he's also never been much of a creator, right? He'd be a shot taker and a goal scorer, but he's never had more than 27 assists in a season. And that was like 5, 6, 7 years ago, not recently. So Kyle Palmieri, not known for making a lot of feeds. Tatar is known for making a lot of feeds. So he helps everyone in New Jersey, I think, by being someone who could be good for more than 30 assists if things go well. And New Jersey helps Tatar just by giving him another chance. He's had this kind of funny career, Elon. You know, we always had our eye on him in Detroit, and it took him a long time to break out there. And just as he was starting to play more and get more opportunity after years of waiting, and also he was languishing on a team that was like immediately post dynasty for the Red Wings, right? So they had the occasionally healthy Datsuk and Zetterberg, and that was it. And they had Tatar and Nyquist and Yurko, right? Those were supposed to be the next big Red Wings, and we've seen how that's played out. So just as Tatar was finally getting more opportunity in Detroit, he was dealt to Vegas for what everybody is still like, wow, that was a crazy price to pay. And it sure seemed crazy when Vegas decided to barely use him after acquiring him for, what was it, 3 picks, including one of them being a first rounder. So after he's in Vegas, Tatar goes off to Montreal, where he breaks out with that 60-point season you mentioned, followed up by 75-point pace in the COVID shortened season, the one that was abbreviated because COVID was just beginning. But then suddenly, poof, Montreal is suddenly trying to deal Tatar. And from that point forward, they didn't seem to have any real interest in using Tatar the way that they had been when he had been finding success. And they never really offered any rhyme or reason as to why the Habs decided that they didn't want to put Tatar in the same situations where he was doing so freaking well. I mean, he was still playing a lot with Gallagher and Deneau, and that was still a solid line, but not the same number of minutes. And it didn't seem like he was entrenched the way he had been, as we saw with him getting scratched later on in the season. So look, these are a couple of reasons to excuse Tatar's past performance, but they're also red flags that Tatar has now been on Vegas and Montreal, both of whom decided at the end of his time with them that we don't really want to use this guy anymore. And it's not great to see those red flags on a winger who turns 31 years old this season. But I am pleased to say that when Tatar was doing well before Montreal turned on him, his breakout seasons looked real. The 75-point pace one, that was thanks to some really great power play production. He had 8 power play goals and 14 power play points in 60 games. He scored on 30% of the shots he took on the power play. So maybe he doesn't quite get to a 75-point pace that season. If you regret some of his power play shooting, maybe it's more 65, 70 points, but that's still really good, right? And so I really think that what he did was sustainable in his really successful seasons with Montreal. So now I'm looking for reasons to believe that Tatar's last season, where things didn't go so well, was just a blip and the aberration. And I actually can't really find one either. I'm like, oh yeah, everything kind of adds up for Tatar's weak season, his weak final season in Montreal too. So I think what I will do is I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, I'm chalking up last year to Tatar just not fitting the system too well and being a player who the Habs were trying to shove out the door. So, which is weird that they felt this way starting during the season where he had 61 points in 68 games. But I think I've gone on about that enough already. But this is where I hope that Tatar is a much better fit in New Jersey. He's with a team that appreciates and wants him, and Tatar can support and be supported by Hischier and Hughes down the middle, hopefully get some top power play time. New Jersey needs Tatar. Tatar needs New Jersey. So I'm hoping for a very happy marriage here. I'm going to put him at about 60 points. And that's really just based on how successful, how offensive a team can New Jersey be this year. Like I said, they've been like bottom quarter of the league in their production over the last 3 years. So let's hope that Tatar helps them take off. But I'm not all the way there thinking, oh yeah, New Jersey's got all their offense solved. They're going to be even a mid-pack team this year. I need to wait and see on that. So there is some downside for Tatar. If they're not there offensively, that's not great, but there is some upside if they are. So I'm kind of hedging by just going in the middle, 60 points, Tatar being a winger that New Jersey really needs and who I think they're going to need to rely on.
Yeah, and don't forget, New Jersey also brought in Dougie Hamilton, the big prize of free agency. So hopefully that's going to help their power play. As long as Tatar could get on that top power play, I think it'll be a lot stronger having Dougie Hamilton. Also, Hamilton's just going to play a lot of even strengths too, and hopefully drive more offense. That's why they're spending $9+ million a year for the next 7 years, whatever it is, on Dougie. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I think around 60 points makes sense. By the way, the return for that trade with Vegas. So what Vegas sent to trade were 3 picks that turned into Joe Veleno, who's probably going to start actually playing as a regular next season. So he's a guy that has some upside. A player named Zachary Galanto, I've never heard of, and then a guy named Jonathan Berggren, who I have heard people talk about. So we're still yet to find out if Vegas paid too much in that trade, but we'll find out in a couple of years once these Detroit prospects actually start making it to the team. So of course, if Tatar is going to take one of these top 6 wing spots, that does mean one player is going to drop out of the top 6. And so maybe someone does take it. So let's just take a quick look at the fantasy impact for everyone else. I mean, one player that jumps out to me is Pavel Zacha. Last year had this breakout season. I don't even think we talked about him enough on the podcast. He had 35 points in 50 games. It's a 57-point pace. His career high before that was a 40-point pace the year before. This is a guy, high pedigree, right? He was the 6th overall pick in the 2015 draft where McDavid and Eichel went 1-2. Just 4 picks later, Pavel Zacha went off the board. Brian, I know you hate it when I say that a pick is looking like a bust, but this pick for New Jersey was looking like a bust for a while. Like after he went at 6, 7 through 10 were Provorov, Werenski, Timo Meier, and then Mikko Rantanen. Colorado just nailed that pick at 10. So Brian, are you of the belief that this 57-point pace wasn't? Are you of the belief that this 57-point pace was like Zacha's coming out party as a valuable piece in fantasy, or was he just benefiting from increased time on ice and opportunity? Like, remember, Hischier was out for a lot of the season, and now with Tatar in the picture, I could imagine a situation where Zacha just goes down to become the third-line center or winger, and loses a lot of that opportunity to produce like he did.
That's where I am at on Zacha. There were times last year where it seemed like his scoring streaks were just being powered by unsustainable percentages. And there were others where I did pause and think maybe he is for real. But ultimately, I think Zacha ends up out of the top 6. It's just my guess because he's the only other natural centerman that I see on their roster who can step in on the third line. I see that Kuokkanen and Sharangovich both have center eligibility too. Like I'm looking at Cap Friendly on the Devils depth chart. I see that they both play center, but that wasn't their job last year, whereas Zacha has already played center for a couple seasons with the Devils. So I could see things being fluid and the Devils using, hey, we've got 5 wingers who belong in our top 6, which are the best 4. Let's try out some different combinations. I could see that happening, but if you had to make me guess right now, which you are, I'm going to guess that Pavel Zacha is the odd one out because he's the one who's most capable of helping the third line.
I see. Okay. They do have a couple of prospects, though. We'll have to see, like Jesper Bokvist, like Michael McLeod. These are guys who could come up and be like the 3rd and 4th line centers, allowing Zacha to maybe be a winger in the top 6, playing with Hischier, let's say Bratt. And then you have Hughes with Shrangovich and Tatar. There is a situation where Zacha could be in that situation again and on the top power play because he did have this breakout season, right? And the Devils did use a high pick on him once upon a time. So I definitely don't think he's a guy I'm going to let go undrafted. But like you say, Brian, there's also a lot of downside there if he ends up being more of a depth guy. So he's the kind of guy that I'd be very happy to get with one of the last picks in my draft as a flyer. But yeah, I'm not going to use a high pick on him, expecting another 60-point season almost. Okay, let's continue. I'll just go to the next team now.
Oh, I guess I can. I'll just say.
Okay.
60 points is definitely too rich for Zacha. I would see 50 as a success. Maybe he can push to 55, but I would certainly, 60 points puts him in the same sphere or tier as Tomas Tatar, and I see a pretty clear distinction between Tatar and Zacha.
I mean, I saw a pretty clear distinction between the two of them last season, with Zacha being the one that was a lot more valuable in fantasy. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, but Tatar wasn't wanted by his team last season. He's wanted by this team. I really hope it goes well. I guess the flip side is it could be like Dadonov coming to Ottawa, right? Except Dadonov was coming off of a success, but it just wasn't a fit with his new team. I'm really hoping that the Devils and Tatar work better. As you can hear, I have faith that it will.
Well, now that you say that, I feel like I just want to say I'm hoping that Zacha continues to do really well because
I hope so too. I hope everybody gets 75.
Of course, that'd be great. All right, so let's move on to another big signing. We talked about the Arizona Coyotes, as we talked about every single team, and we made a mistake. I'll admit it. We forgot to mention that one player that they signed in the offseason is this guy, Dimitri Yaskin, out of the KHL. And if the name sounds familiar, it's because he started his career with the Blues, playing 6 seasons. We talked about him on Keeping Karlsson now and again. Then he went to Washington 2018-19. He was never really an impact guy, though. He never produced better than a 27-point pace season, pace for less than 20 points in each of his last 4 NHL seasons. But then he went over to the KHL and he absolutely dominated in the past 2 seasons. He scored 31 goals and 63 points in 58 games in 2019-20. That put him 2 goals behind only Kirill Kaprizov for the league lead in goals. Then last year in 2020-21, he scored 38 goals in 59 games. That led the league in goals, was actually second all time in goals in the KHL in a season, behind only Sergei Mozyakin's 48 goals in 2016-17. So Dimitri Yaskin has built a name for himself in these last couple of years. Now he comes to Arizona. Brian, any sense like where we should expect Yaskin to slot into the lineup? And do you think, to me, it seems like obviously, like it wouldn't even be hard for him to crush his previous NHL highs, which, like I said, were so low. Like, I don't know. How does this happen? First of all, how does it, I guess obviously it's a different league, different format, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, what do you think for Yaskin next year? Like, one thing I will note is when he was in the NHL, he had 207 hits in 76 games with the Blues back in 2017-18. So this guy is a huge hitter. If he could also score some goals, like all of a sudden, this is like a OV light, right? Someone who could like be a real key for you in your bankers leagues. I'm not expecting you to say that Yaskin's going to be the next OV at 28 years old, but like, is he someone that you'd be drafting, or is he someone that maybe like watch list at best?
And that's why you listen to Keeping Karlsson, to hear that Dimitri Yaskin, even if we're not sure what he can produce offensively, he does have this hitting reputation that is going to help him, give him some automatic value, hopefully in bangers leagues, if he is still that kind of player on his second visit to the NHL. And of course, you mentioned, Elon, we've talked about Yaskin on the show before. Over the course of a couple of years, we did bring him up here and there. And when we did, it was to mention that Yaskin had shown some offensive promise and he could be in line for a turn in the top 6 because of an injury or trying something new in St. Louis. But Yaskin never got a sustained turn there. So for anybody who's looking at Yaskin's numbers from his first stint in the league with St. Louis, don't get so discouraged about what you see. To really paint the picture, over his final 3 years in St. Louis, Yaskin's most common forward line mates were, in order from most played with to least played with, Kyle Brodziak, Patrick Berglund, Magnus Pajärvi, Scotty Upshaw, Yuri Laterra, Vladimir Sabatka, Robbie Fabry, David Backes, Ivan Barbashev, and then Then the first interesting name, Braden Shen, who Yaskin only played with for 190 minutes at 5-on-5 over the last 3 seasons he spent in St. Louis. And I don't think that Yaskin was playing with these guys because he wasn't good enough for the top 6. Rather, I think he was just defensively responsible, and St. Louis liked him a lot as a checking winger, someone who can, I guess, throw a lot of hits. But now he's in Arizona with perhaps a chance to get into a scoring role. And looking at him in a vacuum, I wonder, like, I'm going to bring up Dadonov again, just because Dadonov also toiled in North America for a few years before lighting it up in the KHL and then returning at age 28 to do the same with Barkov in Florida. Of course, the big and crucial difference is there's no Barkov in Arizona for Yaskin to play with. He's got at center Schmaltz, Christian Dvorak, who's rumored to be traded consistently, Barrett Hayton, Jay Beagle, and some other dudes are the center depth in the desert. I'm trying to think of a player who came over from the KHL for this roster in Arizona, and I can't. It's like, so when we're thinking of, your Panarins and Dadonovs and Kaprizovs, Yaskin is not the same because they all went to situations where they could succeed. I don't know, man. In Arizona, so few Coyotes were rosterable last year. They're even worse this year. So I don't know how Yaskin succeeds offensively unless he can put a line on his back. So I'm going to keep an eye on him to see how the first couple weeks go, and for sure keep an eye on his hits numbers too. But I'm not going to reach for him in my drafts.
Kaprizov last year had his most common centerman being Victor Rask. I don't know if Nick Schmaltz is that worse of an option.
No, fair point. But the rest of the Minnesota Wild roster was better than what the rest of the Coyotes roster was.
I don't know. I think the Coyotes have a better defenseman in Jacob Chychrun, better than anyone that Minnesota had to play with on the power play.
Okay. Sure.
Hey, I'm just throwing
so you're right.
points.
Arizona's a golden situation for Dimitri Yaskin. He's going to put up Kaprizov numbers there. Way to go. You proved it.
Well, I'm just saying, like you said, you've never seen someone do it. I think Kaprizov was just so amazing that he was able to not have the best line mates and still produce. I don't know if Yaskin is that amazing. I just know that Yaskin has almost broken the record for most goals in the KHL,
sure.
But we've also seen him stink in the NHL. And like you've said, it's been on situations where he won't be given a chance to succeed. We think he will be given a chance to succeed here, but he'll also have to do a lot of the play driving himself, like you say, because who knows who he's playing with. But Kaprizov did pretty well.
I'm very open-minded. I don't think you can draw a great parallel between the Arizona roster that Yaskin gets to play with and the Minnesota roster that Kaprizov got to play with. But I guess we'll find out.
I want to make all the analogies now. Maybe Kevin Fiala is like Clayton Keller. Okay. Zuccarello is like, who else is there? Oh, like Phil Kessel. This is working out perfectly. It's a perfect analogy.
Okay, you heard it here first. Arizona is making the playoffs this season like the Wild did last. And what happened in the playoffs? The Wild were very competitive. So Arizona is going to be competitive in the playoffs too. You heard it from Elon Dabrowski.
All right. Yeah, I'm just responding to what you're saying. I think that like Pavel Zacha, I'm not reaching for Yaskin in my drafts, but I'm also not letting him go undrafted. Like I'd love to take a late round. Obviously, we'll see what happens in training camp. We'll see how Yaskin is doing. But like, I think he has upside. Like we've seen that he has upside from him scoring the most goals ever, aside from, was it Sergei Mozyakin in the KHL? So this guy can score goals.
How many rounds later would you draft him compared to where you wanted to? Because I wanted to draft Kaprizov last year. I missed him in most leagues because he went 1 or 2 rounds sooner than I wanted. But how soon are you, like, relative to Kaprizov, where are you drafting Yaskin?
So don't get me wrong. I think Kaprizov is like a million times better than Yaskin.
Okay.
Like it's not like I was just comparing the situations they went to and that Kaprizov was able to succeed. But no, Yaskin is not someone, again, Kaprizov I knew was going to be awesome last year. Maybe I didn't think he would be like this awesome, but I knew he'd be someone that if I could get, he'll be on my team all season. I wasn't thinking that he'll become like a free agent at some point. Yaskin, could be good, could not. So it's at the point of my draft where like the way I play fantasy is I like to have a lot of swings with my later picks, assuming that I'm going to be doing a lot of streaming and looking at free agents to start the year anyways, to try to find those gems. So I'd rather not use my late picks on like guys who are boring that I just know are going to be a solid 50 to 55 point guy. I'd rather take a swing. And Yaskin right now to me looks like someone to take a swing on, but we'll have to see what happens. Yeah. Let's finish off really quickly. This isn't a change, but I just thought it was interesting that Darnell Nurse signed an 8-year, $9.25 million extension with the Oilers after that amazing season last year. But like, wow, I did not expect Nurse to be the 5th highest paid D-man in the league, which he will be when his contract takes effect in 2022-23. He'll be just behind Erik Karlsson, Drew Doughty, Zach Werenski, who also just signed a contract, and Seth Jones, who just signed a contract. All of these contracts, by the way, that have just been signed don't even take effect next year. It's the year after, where all of a sudden, all these defensemen are going to be making $9+ million. All of a sudden, by the way, I've just realized making like Jacob Chikrin, I think, might be one of the most valuable defensemen in cap leagues at this point, because like everyone else is making $9+ million, including Cale Makar, who signed earlier. I'm sure Quinn Hughes is going to get a similar amount. But yeah, looking at Darnell Nurse, like he was one of the top D in fantasy last year, if not the top D, especially in Bangers League. 16 goals, 36 points in 56 games. That's a 23 goal, 53 point pace, along with his like solid shots and hits and blocks numbers. Just amazing in fantasy. Brian, is he really this good though to deserve this monster contract? I know the answer. I've been on Twitter. I haven't been in a hole. I know that people are saying that the Oilers are nuts for signing this kind of contract with Nurse. But anyways, as far as fantasy goes, do you think that last season was it all possibly sustainable? Or do you think that, like, I'm looking at the shooting percentage and right away going like, there's no way he's going to score this many goals again. But is there any reason to think he could do it again?
You've been on Twitter finding out that Darnell Nurse's contract is apparently bad, but have you been in a room with Ken Holland, Elon, to really know the full story?
Hey, I mean, I can't say I have, unfortunately. Maybe one day I'll get an invite after he listens to this podcast where we compliment them so much.
Well, yeah, that's a different podcast, actually. It's not happening here. I think I'll answer your question about Nurse being worth his contract with another question. You know, like, as the guys we've had time to watch after signing mega deals have Drew Doughty or Erik Karlsson, who both seemed maybe both were a little rich, but still they both seem like decent bets to justify their contracts. Have they been good enough to justify their own contracts? I'm going to answer my question with a question, say no, they haven't even been close. So what is Darnell Nurse going to have to do to live up to this? Like with Doughty and Karlsson, I could have at least told you what I expected from them. I can do the same with Dougie Hamilton's contract too, but with Nurse, I'm not sure. Like, I can't imagine a world where he does add up all of what he contributes to that number. As Low Tide, Alan Mitchell pointed out on The Athletic, for defense alone, the market standard might be that Adam Pelech contract with the Isles that he signed for, what was it, just under $6 million. And Darnell Nurse is not Adam Pelech defensively. He's helped out by, like, Mike Smith was doing amazing last year. And I think that helped Nurse's numbers look better or reflect better on him than he might have earned. But I think the ultimate question is, you asked, can Darnell Nurse be good enough on defense and earn his keep via offense? And I see a couple red flags around his 53-point pace last season that tells me I'm not sure Darnell Nurse can earn his offensive keep. First, as you guessed, Elon, he scored 12 goals at 5-on-5, but they came at a 9% shooting percentage compared to his usual 5-on-5 shooting percentage, which is closer to 4%. Second, Darnell Nurse's on-ice shooting percentage was a career high, nearly 11%. And you'd say, sure, he plays with Connor McDavid. Of course it's high. That's normal. And you'd be right for a lot of players who play with elite superstars, except that Darnell Nurse has also spent substantial time with Connor McDavid the 2 years before this last one and has never seen an on-ice shooting percentage above 9%, let alone close to 11%. So those are two reasons why Darnell Nurse probably overperformed last season, and he only got 53 points. So I think it's going to be an uphill climb for him to get back up to 50 points. But the good news for fantasy managers in leagues that count hits and blocks and shots is that he generally does enough in those other categories to allow you to still find a lot of value in him if Nurse can even get to 40 or 45 points. Anything more than 45 points would be absolute gravy. It's not something I'm counting on, though.
Yeah, me neither. So obviously he's going to go super high in drafts. You're going to have to decide if he's worth it at the time that he's getting taken in your league. And I think if people are just like ranking people by how they did last year, Nurse is going like way higher than I'm willing to draft him at, just because, like you said, all these percentages are a bit too high to expect them to sustain for another year. Okay, Brian. So that is the episode. I'm going to go back to the beach in just a sec. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope that people enjoyed this show, learned about the Cupful, are going to consider signing up for the Cupful. So again, check out keepingkarlsson.com/patron to get your information about how to become a patron and then join the Cupful, or cupful.com. If you want to get more information about the Cupful itself, we're going to link to all this in the show notes. Don't you worry. Follow us on Twitter at keepingkarlsson. We'd love a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you'd be so kind. But with that, Brian, I think I'm done asking for things. So why don't we cue the outro music, and then you can go ahead and read us the credits.
All right. This episode of the Keaton Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and powered by our patrons. Special thanks to a few patrons, Kevin Hebert, Jeremy Versillo, and John Newhold, for helping us think through all of our Cupful launch ideas and implement a bunch more fun stuff that's on its way. We really appreciate your help. Logo art by BrandonWeave.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, and NBC Sports Edge.
Great job, as always, Brian. I guess we've got more shows coming soon. Soon we're going to start our like big heavy hitters of shows, right? Like Smorgoliesborg and looking at Yahoo rankings. Like it's all coming very soon. We've also got some beat writer interviews coming. Really looking forward to talking to you through all the fantasy stuff as we head towards the season.
The NHL season is coming, and as it does, remember, if you want to play in the Cupful, yes, the NHL season is coming, which means the Cupful season is coming. And like the Cupful, please, how am I doing this? Okay.
It's good. Like the Cupful, just say, please remember that fantasy hockey. Please make it so.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
please make it the case. You go from please.
Please make it the case. And like the Cupful, please keep doing everything you can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Edward, Shams, Matt, John. Oh, yeah, John. Hey, John. All right. Yeah. Is Kenneth still here? That was a long time ago. All right. So he's probably eating dinner right now. All right, Brian. Great job. So we'll talk today about organizing whatever we need to do to get that registration form ready to go by the time I release the show.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye. Have fun.
Bye, everyone.